thinkers, we are ready today to take a look at a document. This document that we're going to be analyzing has to do with our second question. So let's start off by reviewing what our first part was, and then we'll get into our second part today. You ready to roll?
Yes.
All right. So our essential question is, did Charles Sumner deserve it? And last week, when we were looking at that very first question that said, what happened to Charles Sumner? And you looked at this image and we analyzed this document, we found out what happened to Charles Sumner. Tell a partner sitting next to you right now what happened to him. First of all, what happened to Charles Sumner? Ali, what happened? He got hit with a gold-topped cane. Tell me more about that. Lindsay, what can you tell me?
He said some things that he shouldn't have to the South.
He was saying things to the South that he shouldn't have been saying. Okay. Jay, something else to add to that? He was stuck underneath his desk. His knees were stuck underneath there and it was bolted down. So therefore, he couldn't get out, could he? Allie.
He was almost killed.
He was what? He was almost killed because he was beaten so badly by this cane. Olivia.
I'm guessing he probably got a concussion since he was hit in the head.
If he was hit in the head, it did say that he was in the hospital and he was injured, wasn't he? So you're right, concussion or even worse might have been, right? Because as you said, he was almost killed by this. Alexis.
He was out for 3 years.
He was out of the Senate, out of Congress for 3 years after this happened, which tells us he was probably pretty bad, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And you said the reason why someone did that to him was why? Why again was that? That happened? Berkeley, can you help me?
He was saying things about the South.
He was saying things about the South. Why would he want to say things about the South? What would be his reasoning for doing such things, Caroline?
Because
Olivia, I need you to sit down.
he didn't like slavery.
He did not like slavery. What was Charles Sumner?
An abolitionist.
He was an abolitionist, you're right. So he didn't really believe in slavery, did he? And why would he be saying bad things about the South?
Because they have.
They have slavery. All right. So you were already making some opinions after last week about whether or not you thought our question, did Charles Sumner deserve it? Some of you were already making informing opinions about that. And I believe that we said last week, maybe we need to know just a little bit more information before we can move on. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
So I was actually going to read a little bit out of here that actually summarized what you guys just said. And I don't think that I need to because you just gave a better summary than the book gave about what happened to Charles Sumner. So I'm just going to skip over that if you're okay with that. All right, so today, here is the question for this week that we're going to be focusing on. What influenced Preston Brooks' action? Now, nobody mentioned the name Preston Brooks when you were giving me your summary. Talk to a partner sitting by you. Who is that? So who's Preston Brooks again? Help us with that, Kale. Who is that?
He's the governor of the seminary in South Carolina.
Yeah, what did he do?
He hit him with the gold. He hit Johnson with the gold top cane.
So he is the one who actually took on this action of hitting him with the cane, wasn't he? And you're right, he's related to one of the people in the Senate, which is why this all happened, right? He heard about it and he came in and did this. So if we're talking about what influenced him, what does the word influenced mean? Talk to a partner about that word. Go. 3, 2, 1, and 0. Influenced. Stone. Can you tell me what does influenced mean?
It means it's the cause of the action.
It's the cause. We were talking about cause and effects. You just told me about the effects of Charles Sumner, didn't you? So what we're trying to look at, what was the cause or what influences that made Preston Brooks actually do that. So that's what we're looking at today. To actually figure that out, we have a document to look at. This is a handbill, okay? So a handbill during this time period would be like an advertisement or something that was handed out to people to give them news. Why would they not have just put this on the TV?
Because they don't have
Why not, Ethan?
there were no TVs.
There weren't any. Okay? So, why did they not just put this on the radio?
Because they didn't have it.
Why not, Hank?
They didn't have it.
They didn't have radios at this time. All right, so the main means of getting communication back and forth was possibly a newspaper to give information. Sometimes they posted things like this for people to read, too. Even something to add to that?
Also, their farthest communication was yelling out the window.
Yeah, and they also did that, too. They would yell things from one place to another. They didn't have cell phones, they didn't have walkie-talkies, they didn't have TVs, radios. None of those types of communication were made. Now, let's think about this. Handbill. It has the word hand in it because I am going to hand it out and you're going to read about this bill or this document. So a bill is a type of a document. So if we take a look then, outrage handbill was made in 1837. So when we look at a document or an image, what's the very first thing that we should do? Source it. So let's source it. Read the source down below to me. It's down here at the very bottom. 1837. Outrage. Retrieved from http://www.loc.gov.exhibits.african.images.outrage.jpg. Do you know what that means? What does all that mean? Why did we take the time to read on that?
You just take away all the other words, and the LOC stands for Library of Congress.
Library of Congress. So where is this stored right now? The Library of Congress. Did I have to go back to 1837 to get this? No. I just went. I could go onto this website and actually find this image on there. So it's housed at the Library of Congress. Okay? And it was made in 1837. Do you see where it says JPG at the end? That stands for picture. So it has a picture of this handbill that's on the Library of Congress website right now. It's a primary source. It was actually made in 1837. Let's read it. It has a title first.
Outrage.
Outrage. Tell a partner sitting next to you, what does outrage mean? 3, 2, 1, 0. Here's what Lydia just said to me. It's like saying, I can't believe it. That is outrageous. That is beyond. That's what she just did to me. Pretty good way to show it, isn't it? Yeah, good job, Lydia. So outrage is the title. Here's what it says. Fellow citizens, an abolitionist of the most revolting character is among you, exciting and feeling of the North against the South. A serious lecture to the delivered this evening at 7 o'clock at the Presbyterian Church in Cannon Street. You are required to attend and unite in putting down and silencing by peaceful means this tool of evil and fanaticism. Let the rights of the states guaranteed by the Constitution be protected. February 27, 1837, the Union forever. Now, if you take a look, that's the original. What did we do down here? What is this right down here? Charlie, what's that?
It's got more details about it.
Okay. Well, if we look at it right down here, are those same words?
Some, not all.
Not all of them. So what's the things in parentheses? What do those stand for,
The
Lindsay?
meanings of the words that we didn't really quite understand.
So maybe some of those trickier words that we weren't really sure about might be. Although there's one of them that's on there that I know you know because it's a vocabulary word, right? So we know that lecture means speech. We know that one already. So let's break this down just a little bit because now we've read through the whole thing. But do you have it now? Can you tell me exactly what it means? No. Me either. So when we don't know what something exactly means, what do we do when we're reading it? What shall we do? What should we do? Toby, thanks for raising your hand.
Reread.
Yeah, we want to reread it. to go down here where there's the meanings in here so that way, if there's a word we're not sure about it, we can try and figure out by looking at those. All right? So, we know what outrage means. Lydia's already said, that means something outrageous. I can't believe it. So the title is, I can't believe this. Okay? That's what it's like saying. Fellow citizens. Who is that directed to? Yeah, the citizens of the town, the citizens of this. All right. So now, citizens of the north or citizens of the south? North. Why do you think north? Raise your hand if you can tell me why you think that. I heard north. Nadia.
Because union stands for north.
Ah, the Union Forever says at the end. And so you're thinking that that stands for the north. Okay? So, if we looked, fellow citizens, an abolitionist. Abolitionist. Who is that? Hank? People who are fighting against slavery. So an abolitionist of the most revolting, disgusting, and awful character is among you. Exciting the feelings of the North against the South. Talk to a partner. What do you think that means? Ideas. Fellow citizens and abolitionists of the most revolting, disgusting, and awful characters among you. Exciting the feelings of the North against the South. What do you think that means? What do you guys talk about? Alexis, what do you guys talk about?
That the South is mad at the North and the North is mad at the South.
We know that the North and the South seem to be having a problem with each other. All right, now, in saying that, I have a question for you. Is this before or after the Civil War?
Before.
How do you know it's before?
Because it's 1837.
1837. So wait a second. I thought there was just a fight after, and that's what made the Civil War happen. If this is 1837, and they're already having problems with each other, was it just a problem during the Civil War? Or did the problem start long before that? Exactly. So Alexis said, she got out of that with the North and the South, not getting along so well. Okay? Anybody else figure something out of that? Peyton, could you please put that pencil away and be with us? Thanks. Allie.
It's like how they're so excited because they don't like slavery and they really want to have freedom.
So we know slavery is still happening during this time, don't we? We know that that happens during 1837 too. And we know that there's an abolitionist. So we have somebody who is saying, we don't want that anymore. And it says that he is a character among you. What would that mean? What would that mean?
It means like there's like somebody who's trying to like do something to you or trying to make you do things.
Is with you trying to convince you of things, aren't they? So if an abolitionist was with you, what might they be telling you?
Stop slavery.
Stop slavery. Okay, let's read on to the next part. A rebellious and not loyal speech is to be delivered this evening. A rebellious and not loyal speech is to be delivered this evening at 7 o'clock at the Presbyterian Church in Cannon Street. Okay, what kind of speech? Talk to a partner. What kind of speech is it? All right. So if it's a rebellious type of speech to be given at 7 o'clock at the Presbyterian Church, what type of speech would that be? A speech with things or not good things? And tell me your thinking on that. Hank. Why do you think not good things? Okay. So that means it's a speech. What does this mean? Rebellious and not loyal. What kind of speech would that be, Allie? Somebody that's going against it, isn't it? So they're going to tell you things that are going against. And it's going to be at the Presbyterian Church. Listen to the next part. You are requested to attend and unite in putting down and silencing by peaceable means this tool of evil, and taking extreme actions. Talk to your partner. What do you think that means? What's your thinking on that part now? You're thinking on that part. Berkeley and Nadia, what you guys talk about back there? Or Berkeley and Kale, sorry. Okay. So when they're talking about that you're requested to attend and putting down and silencing, what would you say? If we were trying to put somebody down and silencing, put it down, what would it mean? What would it mean?
Like, putting them, like, hurting them,
Like to stop doing it. Now, when you said hurting them, it says by peaceable means. Would we want to hurt somebody?
No.
No. So it would be like a peaceful what? There's somebody else that I can think of who did some things like this. Who might I be connecting to, Charlie?
Martin Luther King Jr. And I was kind of thinking of John Lewis.
So they're talking about peaceful ways of going in and stopping, right? Those are what this evil is happening. Okay? Let's keep going. Let the rights of the states guaranteed by the Constitution be protected. Okay? Reread that. Let the rights, think about the rights we have, of the states guaranteed by the Constitution be protected. Okay? What were the states deciding on right now? What's going on? You told me earlier what's happening during this time. Right now, what's going on? What's happening?
They're fighting.
They're fighting over what?
Slavery.
You got it, Peyton. So if they're fighting over slavery right now, who gets to decide if they're going to have slavery?
President.
Who gets to decide that, Allie? The Constitution is telling who gets to decide it. Who gets to decide? Kale. Kale, who's deciding it?
It's not Abraham Lincoln because he was the president in 1861.
So Abraham Lincoln is not the president yet, is he? Is Abraham Lincoln deciding who has slavery?
No.
Who does this tell us? I'm going to reread. Listen carefully. Let the rights of the states guaranteed by the Constitution be protected. Who's deciding it? Who does it say is deciding? Lindsay.
The states.
The states are deciding it. Do you remember how there were the slave states who wanted to have slavery and the North said we don't want to? And the states that are fighting back and forth with each other saying, oh, I don't want, yes, no, yeah. And then we had the middle states, the states that said what? Those border states in the middle. Yeah, so we had some states saying no more slavery. We had some in the middle that were like, oh, I'm not sure. I kind of believe in slavery, but I don't really want to go to the nates. There were the states that chose not to secede. And then we had the states in the north who were saying no more slavery. So we have all these states who get to decide this. And who says they get to decide? The Constitution. Tell a partner right now, what's the Constitution again? All right. We analyzed this the first day of school. The Constitution, right? We made our own classroom Constitution. What did this Constitution, what was it designed to do, Nadia?
Like keep the laws and amendments.
The laws and the rules of the United States. You're exactly right. So in the laws and the rules of the United States, for the Constitution, we made the laws and the rules for our class then, didn't we? We made a document that had that part of it on there. Well, if the states then have to follow the Constitution is actually the one that's saying they should get to choose whether or not they're going to have slavery or not. So now it says the Union, the North, forever. Okay? So that, you've already told me, is thinking that you want the North to be the ones who Now, is the war going on yet?
No.
No. So when what? Talk to a partner. So, when it says the North forever, what does that mean? Naughty, what do you think?
Maybe they want to win the fight that's going on.
Yeah, there's still a fight, isn't there? Right now, they're still disagreeing the North and the South, aren't they? So they're talking about that even though the Civil War hasn't started yet. Is this leading to the Civil War, though? Yeah. Olivia, something else to add?
It's just like it's not like the Civil War yet, but it's kind of like they're going like, we're gonna have slavery and we're gonna make our own country. No, you're not gonna have slavery. You're not gonna make your own country. Yes, we are. No, we're not.
Yes, we're still having this like disagreement back and forth, aren't they? Even though the war hasn't actually started right now, there's still the disagreement is there. You're right. And why did the North not really care whether or not there was slavery or not? Why was that? What's in the North that we read about in this book that told us a little bit about the North versus what's in the South that they wanted it for? Alexis?
Because even if they didn't win, they still wouldn't have slavery. So
And why do the people in the South need slavery?
Because they don't really need it. They just want it.
They want it for a certain reason, though. Why do they want it, Allie?
Because they had all these plantations. They had all these slaves to teach us, but they couldn't do it on their own. So they had all these slaves. And
They needed the workers, didn't they? Mason, something to add?
Well, they had before slavery started, they used servants, and they had to pay for them to come to America to work for them. And they didn't stay there forever. They only worked from 4 to 7 years, then they got free. And there weren't enough servants, so that's why slavery started in the first place.
Right, those were indentured servants first, and then they moved into slavery. And still it goes back to just what you girls were just talking about. It's all because they needed somebody to help them with their plantations. Do they have those plantations in the North?
No.
What's in the North?
Actually, they had a couple.
They have in the North.
Cities and
Yes, more city life and shops and factories, isn't it? Now, do you remember what it was that they had in the North that they wanted? That cotton and stuff that they were growing? Does anybody remember what that was?
Sure.
That's actually, I'm previewing or foreshadowing something we're going to be talking about next in social studies. Yeah, put it in for me, Peyton. I used a vocabulary word. But do you know what that is? They were cotton mills, cotton factories, where they used that cotton to actually make clothing. And things made out of cloth were actually made in factories in the North. So they did want some in the North really did want them to be able to still produce that. So there were some people in the North that were like, well, I don't know, maybe we should have slavery because you know what? We need those crops that they're all giving us to help us run our factories too. And so there were also people going that way with it too. Olivia?
Well, it's kind of like they're saying that we shouldn't have, the North was saying like we shouldn't have slavery, but at the same time we should because then you'll bring in the crops and we can make money off it and you can sell stuff.
Right, okay. Charlie, one last thing.
Why couldn't they just keep paying them instead of having and give them better treatment so then they could stay there? But
So you're looking for an alternative way other than slavery to pay somebody to work on their farm and treat them just a little bit better. You think would be a better way to do it. Okay, all right. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just clarifying what you're saying. Okay, Nadia?
Why do they just make the black people do the work instead of white?
Okay, so why was it just blacks who were made as slaves and not white people who were made as slaves is what you're asking. Which is a great question. We were talking about slavery, right? Now, what have we figured out? And we even had an assembly about this morning.
We should all
What was it? Raise your hand if you can tell me. What were they talking about in that assembly this morning? Jace, what was it?
Differences are okay.
Differences are okay, right? Were we looking at it that way during this time period?
No.
No, they did not really look at it that way. We are trying to look at it that way now. And so, Nadia, that's the reason why. That was the way that they thought during that time. right or wrong, our opinions, that we can tell our opinions now. That's the way that they thought of it. Okay. Alan.
I think the others that they told me, they didn't really have to pay them in money, they could pay them in clothes, so more shelter and more food, because they wouldn't run away and they would be nice.
They could have solved some of their problems, couldn't they, that they had. I exactly agree with you. Okay, so now let's look at the next part. You kind of had this figured out by what you just told. Okay, they're having a peaceful what? It is. It's kind of like a peaceful call to action. And they want a peaceful way then to help abolitionists what?
Help the slaves escape.
Yeah, they're trying to still help slavery, and abolitionists are the ones who are trying to do that. So if we could go in and tell those abolitionists to shh, we would like it better. You think that we should do that?
Yeah.
So we should tell the abolitionists, let's go ahead and keep going with what you're doing. Or should we stop the abolitionists?
Tell them to keep going.
Keep going? Because what's an abolitionist trying to do?
Stop slavery.
All right. All right. So from there, let's take a look then. If we have a number notes planner that you'll help me start. Would you help me start this today? All right. So our topic that we're going to be thinking about is influences of who?
Preston Brooks.
Preston Brooks. So our topic, influences of Preston Brooks. Now, I'm going to go down to the very first big idea that we were just talking about. What did we analyze today that could go into that one spot right here? Would you talk to a partner right now? What was this? All right. What could I put in my one right here? What are they trying to do right now? What are they trying to do, Lindsay?
They're trying to stop slavery.
Trying to stop slavery. How?
By putting out outrages and
Okay, outrage is the name of it, and that's called a
handbill.
handbill. So outrage is a handbill. Okay, and you said they're trying to stop slavery. Those are the two things I heard so far. Okay, I still don't have my big idea yet. How are they doing this through? They did it through a handbill, but if we think back to what we were just talking about, there was one main word that you guys really focused on right down here.
Peaceful.
What does that mean?
Is it peaceful process?
Peaceful actions.
Like a peaceful protest.
Okay. Peaceful action. Kind of like a protest. So a call to action would be then to have that action that we're trying to then stop, right? All right. So now, anything else that you think would be a tell me more that has to do with this today? Where was it at? What was going on back in our document? Help me with another tell me more. If you're saying that they're trying to stop slavery, what did the people of the South think of that? What did they think of that, Jace?
No.
They're thinking, no way, right? Yeah. So, would you say that it angered people of the South? Okay. Angered people wanting slavery. Okay. All right. Charlie, something else to add?
Say that it was outrageous.
And they said it was outrageous, which is the title that we have right in here, right? Anything else that you just talked to your partner that you're thinking we could put as a tell me more, or do you think that we have it here? Allie. was the abolitionists who were doing that. So let's put abolitionists with that. When is this happening?
1837.
Let's put that one again
37.
as, tell me more. Because that tells us it happened before the war. All right. So, right now, one thing that is influencing Preston Brooks' action. What's going on right now? People are doing what? What are they doing? Talk to a partner. What are they doing? So, what is going on? To wrap us up today, there's an influence of Preston Brooks. That when he probably heard about this, he was outraged at what was going on. What does this have to do with? Hank, what were you just talking about? Yeah, having these meetings right here. They didn't want the abolitionists doing that. They didn't want them to stop slavery. And so when these meetings and stuff are going on, the people who still want slavery are outraged. You've got it. We have an overall essential question that we've been talking about right now. Read it with me. It says, did Charles Sumner deserve it? That's what we're trying to figure out. We're trying to form an opinion on whether or not we think he deserved what happened to him. And we reviewed yesterday about what that was. And you guys told the story so well that I think we have that part of it. So we looked at what happened to him already, and we made some notes up here. We started yesterday looking at the question, what influenced Preston Brooks? Tell a partner again, who's Preston Brooks? Who is Preston Brooks again? Who was that, Nadia?
The senator of South Carolina.
The relative of the senator of South Carolina who did what? Who was the one that came in and hurt Charles Sumner while in the Senate, right? And so we're trying to decide then, did he really deserve that or not? We've been putting things on our timeline so far to look to see what were the influences. And we said yesterday that an influence is something that makes you do something for a reason. It influenced your decision, or you did it because of that, right? So we're looking for things that might have influenced him. Yesterday, we looked at a document, a handbill, that was called what? Outrage. And we were outraged. Then they wanted what to happen. What was that talking about in outrage? Talk to your partner right now. Who can help us? What was outrage about? What was that doing? Caroline.
The fight of the South Carolina, the South and the North.
So, yeah, there's some disagreements between the North and the South right now, aren't there? So we were talking about those disagreements starting before or after the Civil War? Before. They're happening long before that. And so we have some people who are trying to stop slavery. What are those people called again, Hank? Abolitionists. And so what was the outrage trying to do? Tell about abolitionists and what was going on. What were they telling in that handbill? What did they want them to peacefully do? Peacefully do what, Charlie? Peacefully stop slavery. How? How are they doing that? What are they asking them to do? By protesting. So they were asking them to go to these meetings and stuff and say that we don't want those abolitionists stopping slavery, do we? So that was an influence. That was something that Preston Brooks was thinking about while he went into the Senate. That was like one of the things. Have you ever had it where like this little thing happened, and then this little thing happened, and then this little thing happened, and all of a sudden it's like you have a meltdown. You just can't take it anymore? And it happened to anybody before? Today we're going to be looking at a different document. It is focused on this gentleman right here. His name is Dred Scott. Now, I found this book in the library that's called The Dred Scott Decision. Dred Scott, you're going to find out just a little bit more about here in just a second. But by taking a look at the picture right now, would you think that he was a slave or not a slave? Tell a partner what you think and why. What do you think? Do you think that Dred Scott was a slave or not a slave? And tell me why you think what you do. Austin, could you give me your opinion right now?
Probably a slave.
What makes you think, by looking at that picture, that he could possibly be a slave?
Because he's black and it's near the time of slavery.
Okay, he's black, and we know that we're talking about the time of slavery. Now, when they say a decision, what does a decision mean? What does a decision mean, Kale? You're picking between two things. Okay? Now, this decision was a huge decision that's being made about Dred Scott in the document that we're going to be reading. The decision that's being made isn't his decision. If we take a look at the very top of your paper, it says majority opinion. See that? Majority opinion. In the Dred Scott versus Sanford U.S. Supreme Court. Now, if I read that, what do you think about that title? Majority opinion in Dred Scott versus Sanford U.S. Supreme Court, 1857. Talk to a partner about what you know about what that title right there. Let's see what you think. Jace, what were you just saying? I just heard some words that sounded interesting. Could you tell me about what you were just thinking about?
Back in slavery, there used to be a slave sheet that you had to pay a lot of money for. So if you sign it, it needs to be a free man.
Okay.
You don't
So you're saying that back in the time of slavery, there were some people who actually got freed because of the work that they did, and they could sign a paper and get to freedom. And you're thinking that maybe they're deciding whether or not he's going to be free or not free. Okay? So that's a prediction that he has so far. Okay, Alexis, what do you think?
I think that somebody's guilty and they're and they had to go to court and the judge doesn't really know. They have to choose who's guilty or not.
Okay, so either yes or no, guilty or not. Here's the next thing. You were talking about with Austin when I heard you talking to him. You said you know what the U.S. Supreme Court was. What is that? Because we've talked about that before. What does that mean?
Where some people go when they get in trouble,
Okay.
and they have to decide if they go to jail.
Okay, so there are decisions that are made at the U.S. Supreme Court. Do all court cases get decided there?
No.
Can anybody think of a court case that we've already studied about that was decided there and it made a really big difference in what was going on? Olivia, do you remember what it was?
I can't remember what it was, but it was something that had to do with segregation.
It did have to do with segregation. You're right. You're on the right track. Allie, can you help us?
Brown versus Board of Education.
Brown versus Board of Education. And what was decided? When that was decided in the Supreme Court, what happened, Olivia?
All blacks could go to school with whites, and whites could go to school with blacks.
Segregation of school, no longer. Who was the lawyer who was trying it in that court case? On the count of three, if you remember, tell me. 1, 2, 3. Nice job. Thurgood Marshall was the one. Now, this is 1857. Was Brown versus Board of Education before or after this? Yes, a long time after that. Because we know that this is during slavery and that was during segregation. Exactly. But it does give us the context or the idea of knowing it's a court case in the Supreme Court. Not everything's decided there. Only really big cases are decided there. So do you suppose that this case is a little deal or a big deal?
Big
Big deal. You're exactly right. So, let's do this now. We've read the title. Let's go on to the next part where we actually do like what we did yesterday and read a part of it and talk to a partner about it and see if we can figure out exactly what this document or this court case is actually saying in it. This is what's going to tell us what happens in the outcome of it. The question is simply this. Here it goes. Can a Negro whose ancestors were brought into this country and sold as slaves become a member of the political community, the ones that can vote and be a part of making laws, formed and brought into existence by the Constitution of the United States, and as such become entitled to all the rights, privileges, and immunities and protections guaranteed by the Constitution to the citizen? That is a very long question. If we break that down into parts, what were some things that you just heard in there? Talk to a partner about some key words in there. Go.
Citizen of the community.
Nope, you have to find it out. I got some key words just in that first thing, which is kind of long. What are some things that you notice in there? Some things you notice. Keyword, Lindsay? Ancestors. So we know ancestors. Can a Negro whose ancestors were imported, that being brought here as slaves, can they be in this country sold? Okay? Can they get the same rights as you? Should they be able to?
Yes.
You think they should? That's the question that they're asking right here. Should they have the same equal rights? Toby, you think that they should too. Now, what would have to make that happen? What would have to make that happen, Nadia?
A law.
A law. What kind of law? So the Constitution says this. What law would have to be made that says you're a citizen and you have the right to vote? Oh, we've even talked about this before. Toby, do you remember what it is?
13th Amendment.
13th Amendment said...
No more slavery.
Okay, so you're on the right track. It's an amendment, all right. Which amendment was it?
I can't remember.
14th Amendment's going to talk about citizenship, you're right. And the 15th Amendment talks about...
Segregation.
Not segregation. Slavery. Not slavery.
Voting rights.
Voting rights. You're exactly right. African American men could vote on the 15th Amendment, right? So, why can't ladies vote? Yeah, we talked about that too, and we put that up on our timeline. So we're going to be talking about when that happened in our very next unit. Promise, we'll get back to that question you have, okay? All right. So what they're asking then, do we have the 14th and 15th Amendment yet? Okay. And if we don't have those yet, then can they really have the right to vote or not? And be a part of the citizens? That's what they're asking. Let's look at the next part. One of which rights is the privilege of suing in a court of the United States in cases specified in the Constitution. I'm going to stop there for a second. Who knows what suing in a court case means? Has anybody ever heard of that before? Allie, have you heard of that before?
Yes.
What does it mean?
Suing means that you're going to do something with them, that you're going to sue them, what people they money.
You're going to try and get money from them usually. And in this case, he's not trying to get money. Dred Scott does not want money.
Maybe trying to
He wants his freedom.
What would Dred Scott, we've already determined we think he's a slave, what would he want, Hank? He wants to be a free man. What are you thinking, Olivia?
I'm thinking that he wants, also, I agree with Hank, but also he also wants, for other slaves to be able to get that too.
So you think him going to court. So if he goes to court then, and this goes in his favor, then that says other African American slaves should get to do it. So that's what you think he wants. Gotcha. All right.
Yeah, I think he's trying to convince them so there's no slavery.
Okay. So he's trying to convince them no more slavery for him to get free. Okay? Because he was born and he was brought here as a slave, and he's worked here as a slave his whole life. So he's trying to get that freedom. Peyton, something else to add?
He maybe doesn't like fighting.
He doesn't like the slavery and the fighting that goes with it.
Yeah.
I have to say that you're probably right on that too. So what they're really asking then is, does the Constitution say that he has the right to do that or not? That's what they're asking right now. So it went all the way to the Supreme Court for the Supreme Court to say, yes, the Constitution says that, or no, the Constitution doesn't say that. That's what they're trying to figure out in this court case. Let's keep looking. The question before us is this: whether the people described in this case, Dred Scott, slave, born a slave, lived here his whole life, worked as a slave, should be able to be considered a citizen. Because if he is, then he should be able to vote and make those laws and change things too. Do you think white people are going to want that?
No. Some are.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's keep reading. A portion of this people and their basic members of the country. Okay? So, we think they are not, and that they are not included, and that they are not intended to be included under the word citizens in the Constitution, and therefore claim none of the rights and privileges of the Constitution of the United States of America. I heard this one word that kept popping up. Did you hear it too? What was it? Not in there. Not in there. Not in there. What's the Supreme Court saying? That they are not. So, do you think Dred Scott is going to win the court case? No. Right? Let's keep reading. It says, on the contrary, that means actually the opposite, is that they were all the time considered as less important and inferior class of beings. People, who are not as good as others, who had been conquered by the white people, and therefore that whether they should be freed or not yet remains subject to figuring out. And no rights and no privileges but such as those who held the power of the government might choose that. So, do you think that Dred Scott is going to get any help here?
No.
Maybe some sort of.
Maybe the North.
Okay, maybe the North can help him. In this court case, can they help him? No. He has tried. He's tried going to the Supreme Court and saying, I think that I should have these rights. But the Supreme Court says in the Constitution, there's not any part in there that says that black people are citizens. They say that only white people are citizens. Because they came here as slaves. And they are people who are not as good as others. Why does that not make sense to you, Lindsay? Tell me what you're thinking. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just asking what you're thinking.
They should be able to do what others are able to do.
Why do you think they should be able to do that?
Because it doesn't matter what you look like. It matters on how you act.
So you're disagreeing and thinking maybe something in the Constitution would need to be changed because of that. All right? During this time, is that actually happening? No. Allie.
Don't judge me for the color of your skin. You have to judge me on what's alive inside. It don't mean you don't want to be their friends. If you're nice and you're black, you can just be their friend.
So you're thinking that it shouldn't be judged in that way, and maybe something done. But if the Constitution says this is the rule, we talked about this being the rules.
But it's not fair. They need to be changed. They need to change something.
So when rules aren't fair, sometimes we have to change, what they are, right? Okay. Okay, now, there's in our next unit that we're going to be talking about, Alexis brought up about women's rights and stuff. Do women have the same right now as men?
Yeah.
No, they don't. They can't vote either. during this time period.
They can work together.
So women can't vote, African Americans can't vote, Native Americans can't vote. There's only one group of people.
White men.
White men.
Holy cow.
Okay? All right, Mason.
I just had one thing to say from a part earlier.
Yes.
Remember how they said that like they thought African Americans were not citizens?
Yes.
I think everyone in the world is a citizen. There are some good citizens and some bad citizens.
Okay. Now I'm going to go back to what you just said because I agree, but I want you to think about something. You said everybody's a citizen. So, if you came from Africa, where were you a citizen at before you came as a slave?
Africa.
Okay? So, when they were brought here, they're saying, we didn't bring them as citizens. We brought them as slaves. That's what they're saying.
So they were saying that you were only a citizen if you are in the country that you were born in.
Yeah, and now we could go back a little bit farther. You all have studied immigration, right, my friends?
Right.
Now, did all of your immigrant family come from another country?
Yes.
So, they came from a different country, and they came to be citizens here. How did they become citizens when they got here? How did you have to get it? What did you have to do? Because I know that you guys studied that. What did you have to do?
Go to Ellis Island.
They went through Ellis Island when Ellis Island was actually built. Is Ellis Island even built yet, right now?
Yeah.
Not even yet.
That's why they're treating them so bad.
So, right now, there's kind of that gray area, isn't there? We're choosing people, Mason, by the color of our skin is really what we're doing. Did I see your point completely? Jay, something else to add?
Like one tiny disease when you were coming from the boat, you'd like to be sent.
You're right. So some were deported back, even if they didn't think that they'd make a good citizen. They'd say, nope, see you, you're going to be deported. So you're right. Allie?
Yeah, if you had a little cold, it just took the cost and would send you back to your
Yep.
country.
Yep. Hank?
You would have to be an American citizen.
You had to become an American citizen. You had to have the right papers. You had to legally become a citizen to be a citizen, right? So are they saying that slaves were that?
No.
No. So that's why he lost his court case. Is because they're saying, no, he really wasn't, is what they were saying. Yeah, something else to add?
It's about the voting.
Yes, tell us about the voting.
Sometimes there was black men who did try standing up to get black men to vote.
You're right. And they tried to get those equal voting rights with the 15th Amendment, didn't they? I agree with you. So we learned, too, about how people would stand together and come together as a group instead of just one person going because there was safety in numbers in it. Berkeley?
If white men could only vote, we wouldn't get that much votes.
Right. So white men decided all the rules, all the laws. They had all the money. They were in charge of their money. If you were a woman, you didn't have money of your own. You had to go through your husband to get that. So it was different back in that time period than it is for today. And like I said, we'll learn more about that in our next unit. Here's what I would like to do. I found a video link that tells a little bit about the Dred Scott case. And since now you've looked at that document, I want you to have a chance to hear this YouTube thing that was put out by the History Channel is who made this. So I'm sourcing it for you. The History Channel, it's a secondary source where they did some research on it, and then they made their own little YouTube movie about it. It's only 3 minutes long, so it's not very long, so it won't take us very long to watch it. And then I'll see if you can make any connections back to the document that we just talked about.
Dred Scott was born as a slave in Virginia in the 1790s. He was sold to John Emerson, a doctor in the U.S. Army. He allowed Dred Scott to marry, and they had 2 daughters. Emerson eventually died, and Scott sued the widow for his freedom. He claimed that he should be set free because he was illegally held when his master took him to Illinois and Wisconsin, both free territories. The case eventually made it up to the Supreme Court as Dred Scott versus Sanford. Sanford was the brother of Emerson's widow. The case was decided on March 6, 1857, just 2 days after Buchanan's inauguration. The court held that it did not have jurisdiction over the case because Dred Scott was not a citizen of the United States. Since the Constitution only gives the federal government the authority between citizens of different states, Scott needed to be a citizen to have a valid case.
It becomes necessary, therefore, to determine who were citizens of the several states when the Constitution was adopted. The legislation and histories of the times, and the language used in the Declaration of Independence show that neither the class of persons who had been imported as slaves, nor their descendants, whether they had become free or not, were then acknowledged as a part of the people, nor intended to be included in the general words used in that memorable instrument.
They pointed to colonial laws in the text of the Declaration of Independence and Constitution. The Fifth Amendment says that no one can be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process. The court said that someone cannot lose their property of slaves just because they went to a state or territory where slavery was illegal. It declared the Missouri Compromise unconstitutional because it would deprive property as well. This was only the second time in American history that the Supreme Court said an act of Congress was unconstitutional. 7 justices agreed with the decision, and 2 did not. The dissenting justices said that blacks could become citizens because at the time of the founding, they could vote in 10 out of the 13 states, which would overturn much of the argument. This case did not settle the issue of slavery once and for all as the South hoped. Instead, the decision was considered very offensive in the North and strengthened the abolitionist movement and the new Republican Party. Dred Scott's and his family's freedom was purchased, but he died less than 2 years after being freed. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and share it with your
I'm going to go back because it said it strengthened something. I want to see if you heard that.
Republican Party. Dred Scott's and his family's freedom was purchased, but he died less than 2 years after being freed.
I didn't go back far enough.
Thanks for... The dissenting justices said that blacks could become citizens because at the time of the founding, they could vote in 10 out of the 13 states, which would overturn much of the argument. This case did not settle the issue of slavery once and for all as the South hoped. Instead, the decision was considered very offensive in the North and strengthened the abolitionist movement and the new...
Strengthen the abolition.
Okay, so, you know how we were talking about one of those things that just keeps adding on and adding on and adding on? And we were talking about Preston Brooks like saying, I've had it, I've had it, I've had it, and he went in. So if we think now back to what would we add to our number notes of what we've learned about today? Get that out right now. So we started yesterday's number notes, and we said that one thing, the influence of Preston Brooks, one of our ones for yellows was going to be peaceful actions and protests. Okay? So what they talk about today, what would go in there? Talk to a partner right now. Go. What would go into this part for today, Berkeley? Definitely Dred Scott's case would go in there. What happened in that case? What happened that could go in there? He lost it. So could slaves actually then be freed?
No.
No. He even had gone to a free state, and they were saying that even then he still could not be considered what? A citizen. So lost the case. Blacks not citizens. Okay? Berkeley.
Going back to the rape, it's kind of sad that he died 2 years after his freedom.
He only got
He died 2 years.
He only got 2 years worth of freedom after all those years in slavery.
But at least he got a free man.
Yeah, you're right. Mason?
Actually, they said he died less than 2 years.
So it wasn't even a total of 2 years, was it?
Nope.
Not even a total of 2 years that he lived in freedom. Alexis.
God wouldn't make you if he didn't think he would be a good citizen, but he made him, so he should be a citizen.
Okay. And the Constitution doesn't say that. In their view right now. And who is making that decision? The Supreme Court. So you're right. The Supreme Court is the one who is making those judicial decisions for us right now. The Supreme Court was. Now, it did say something, and I replayed it for you so that you would hear it. What happened with then the abolitionists? Strengthened
The abolitionist movement.
the abolitionist movement. What does that mean?
That means like a whole bunch of abolitionists, they can do more.
Exactly. They wanted to get stronger and stronger and stronger to stop it because they, just like you, were thinking, that doesn't sound like that was so fair. And it makes it just a little bit sad that he had less, right, Mason, than 2 years even in freedom. Lindsay.
Well, God made us all different, so we could accept our differences.
And you know what? Both you and Alexis have brought that up. There are people who believe in God who think exactly like you do. There are also people who choose not to think and believe in God. Okay? And if there are people who think that, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't think that they should be a citizen or anything less of them. But what I want you to understand, that goes with your beliefs and what's been taught to you, too, of what you're believing now a citizen should be and how a person is and how a person acts. Okay? Not all people would agree with you. That is your definite opinion, and it's okay to have that opinion. But what I'm just pointing out to you is just like in the Constitution, they were pointing out they didn't believe that it was a citizen because of what they thought during that time. So, yes, that's the way that you have been brought to believe too, and what probably your family believes. Okay? So, if we think about it, we now have two things that influenced Preston Brooks. Tell a partner right now, what are those two things that influenced Preston Brooks? All right, to wrap us up today then, we have two influences so far. Things have been happening that led up to Charles Sumner, right? And all that happening at the Senate. What are some of those things leading up to that? Got one for me?
Case.
Yes, that case. So the Supreme Court making decisions in court cases is one thing that led to that. Caroline, what's the other?
Peaceful actions and protests.
Yeah, those peaceful actions and protests exactly is another one that's leading to that one too. So the whole abolitionist movement plays a part in this, doesn't it? Exactly right.
I think that Charles Preston Brooks hurt him because everybody was giving him, when they got mad, they just gave him peaceful.
Yeah.
So he
sees this happening, he sees this happening, he sees this happening, and this is happening, and this is happening, and he doesn't feel like anything is happening in his way that he thinks that it should. Okay? So those are influences, but what it's going to come back to then is thinking of this. You're right, those were influences, but did Charles Sumner deserve that because of the inappropriate language and things that he was saying?
No.
That's what you're going to be deciding by the end. I hear yeses, I hear no's. Okay? I'm not going to argue with you. Just as I just told you before, that's going to be your opinion and what you think then a little bit later that you'll tell in a writing piece, that you'll tell me what you think and why. Okay? Today, we are stopping, and you are passing your papers down to the end again. And my friends down at the end, would you be the collectors of those papers? This morning, we are going to be analyzing a document and looking at an image that are related to the influences of Preston Brooks's actions. We have been talking about how we're going to decide by the end of what we've been doing and thinking and analyzing about did Charles Sumner deserve it? And so we've looked at what happened to Charles Sumner, and this week we've been looking about influences of Preston Brooks's actions. Yesterday, just to recap what we did, we talked about a man whose name was Dred Scott. Actually, you're exactly right. Here's what it says about Dred Scott here, just to remember from what we did yesterday. Many Northern, and so the United States then made that decision, and it outraged abolitionists. I think that it's interesting that this book actually uses the same word of outrage as we've talked about before when we were talking about those peaceful protests and things like that. So they feared that slavery would never be stopped when that court case actually happened. So that was a big concern of theirs. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about another thing that happened that you don't have any background knowledge on, that we haven't talked about in slavery before. It has to do with this picture right here. And it says at the title, Horrid Massacre in Virginia. What's a massacre mean? A massacre. Jace. A lot of people died from something. You're exactly right. Now, let's look at the sourcing down here at the bottom. Take a look. Does anybody see a date where it was happening at? 1831. So we go back here. Yeah, so that's going to be back in this time right here. So it's actually before what happened to Charles Sumner. Right? So it's leading up to that. Remember we were talking about things that influenced Preston Brooks. The protests, the peaceful protests we were talking about, this court case happened before that.
This might have been like the first thing that kind of like, okay.
Yeah, so you think this could be like the first little straw that they're putting on the camel's back for Preston Brooks? Could be, Olivia. Let's find out a little bit more about it. So in 1831, a slave named Nat Turner led a rebellion in Southampton County, Virginia. A religious leader and a self-styled Baptist minister, Turner and a group of followers killed some 60 white men, women, and children on the night of August 21st. So he was what? What was his job? A minister, you're right. So a religious person. Does that sound like something a really religious person would do? Okay. Let's keep reading. Turner and 16 people who were with him were captured and executed. So he had a group of people who was helping him do this. Okay? So they were captured, and then the incident continued to haunt the Southern whites, and blacks were randomly killed over this county in Southampton. Many were actually had their lives taken too. And then an uprising happened after that. And then this picture was actually drawn and printed because of that. So Nat Turner, who was a religious leader then, was somebody who, let me turn this on because I wanted to show you because I have a short video just so that you can see too. All right, third graders. So you can see that Nat Turner's rebellion wasn't such a good thing, was it? No. But you might be able to think, you know how we've been talking about point of view and perspective? If we think of this too, if you were a slave during that time, would you be getting tired of how you were treated?
Yes.
Yes. Is that necessarily the way to handle the situation?
No.
No, it's not, is it? So this rebellion happened where we had then one main slave, Nat Turner, who then got a group of people who they decided on their own that they were going to go take matters into their own hands. Okay. So when that happened then, there was a letter after this took place that was written from one governor to another governor. So let's take a look at what that says. That's our document then for today. So let's see if we can figure out what the governors are talking about in their letter. All right? So, letter to Governor James Hamilton and Governor John Floyd. This is November 19, 1831. And they're going to be talking about this rebellion in there. That's why I wanted to tell you just a little bit about it first, because this wouldn't make much sense if you didn't know what that rebellion was and how bad of an impact that it left on it. Now, were white people willing to stop slavery because of that rebellion?
No.
No, it kept going, didn't
They
it?
just made it worse because they're treating them like that they haven't been treating them. They've been working for them. And they thought, well, if they're just start doing this, it's just making us stronger and we can do more things to them.
And it all came down to how much money they were making from the slaves working for them, too. So let's take a look and see what this says. It says, I am fully convinced that the spirit of the rebellion was Nat Turner's rebellion, an action showing defiance against them, that it is popular in Virginia, began with and came from the Yankee, the northern states of the Union soldiers during the Civil War, during that population when they came to our land, especially the Yankee leaders and traders. So, he is saying that this rebellion was caused by the ideas of who? Talk to a partner. Who was it from? So, who are they saying was a cause of these ideas given these rebellious people, these rebellious slaves, these ideas? Who was it? What did it just say in there? Allie? Okay. They're asking who gave Nat Turner those ideas. Who was it, Hank? The Yankees. And who's the Yankees? Who are they talking about being the Yankees? The northern people, exactly. And because of their ideas, it was them causing this to happen. Okay. Yes?
Also, it's kind of like they're saying we did it because we're not doing it.
Okay. So, let's look at that now. When he's saying that he's from Virginia, the letter, if you look at our source down at the bottom here, well, it's a good question. Where's he from? It says John Floyd, 1831, November 19th, letter from the Governor Floyd of Virginia. Where's Virginia? Northern state or southern state? Southern state. So southern state is blaming the North and saying, it's your ideas that's causing this to happen. Let's keep reading here. This did not happen all at once. This is what he's saying. First, those northern people taught slaves about religion. Because now, what was Nat Turner? What was his job?
Preacher.
Yeah, he was a preacher. So they're saying, well, you taught him about religion, and then after you taught him that, then they talked about Christianity, which is a religion, and they taught the blacks that God did not respect persons or property. Okay? Is that an opinion or is that a fact?
Opinion.
Opinion. Opinion of somebody from the north or opinion of somebody from the south? South, right? He's from Virginia. And they taught that the black man was as good as the white man. So they're saying if you don't have slaves, you're treating and teaching black people that they are as good as white people. Okay? Now, did the people in the South believe that? No, they didn't.
Some of them did.
Some of them. What would you have had to have been if you believed it, Olivia?
Abolitionists.
An abolitionist.
Helping them get away.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Alexis.
Well, everybody is the same, but they just have different opinions, and everybody's a citizen.
Okay? Yeah, and by the Constitution, as we read yesterday with the Dred Scott case, they're not treating black people as citizens, though, are they? Right, and that court case shows us that. But they're saying, if you people in the North, you Northerners and you Yankees, you teach them this, that they're as good as white men, then what they're going to do is they're going to rebel against us. If you teach them these things, you're going to cause a problem for all of us, and that's why this rebellion's happening. So that all men were born free and equal. Do the Southern people believe that?
No.
Not if you like slavery, right?
They're not treating them like the U.S. citizens. They're treating them like African citizens. Like
Saying that you that are supporting it, you're exactly right. They're saying we're treating them as if they're citizens when we do that. Okay? that they cannot serve two masters. That if they believe in God, that then they can't believe and trust their slave master. So what they're saying is we should not be teaching them about religion and things like that, because if we do, then they won't listen to the slave masters anymore. Good. Okay? Yeah, well, does the South think that that's good?
No.
You're thinking that it is, though. If you said good, you're probably thinking you would have been an abolitionist maybe during that time, huh? All right. All right, let's read the last part. Look, the white people rebelled. They were going against England. When they were just talking about the British people coming in here from England, wanted to get their freedom. So the blacks have a right to rebel against the white for their freedom. Saying, if we are showing them that they can do these things, then you are allowing them to have the ideas in their head that it's okay to rebel. Talk to a partner about what you think about that. All right, let's share out now. Okay? As we share out, can you have a seat, please? As we share out, what are you thinking now that we've read this letter from one governor to another governor? What is your thinking? Toby, what are you thinking?
The Constitution says we the people, not we the white people. It doesn't say one person, it says we the people.
Okay, so he's saying in the Constitution, in those big letters that we looked at the very beginning of the school year, it said we the people, not we the white people. So you think that they should do something about this. So do you think then, when we're thinking about this rebellion, do we have people even today in the United States that rebel against things?
Yeah.
Does that ever happen? Can you think of a time where people have rebelled against and anything that we have learned about and had some sort of violence that's happened because of they thought something and another group thought something else? Hank? Riots. We read about those riots, right? So that was a good example of that. Do you remember what the book was that we read? Smoky Night, exactly. So that is an exact rebellion. So that riots that you were connecting back to, great example. Religions. Sometimes religions don't agree with each other, and they have a rebellion against that. What happened on 9/11?
Oh, a bunch of people died.
Hey, you're right. That was a rebellion. Right? So rebellions have happened in history all over time. People are usually hurt during that. We want to try and solve problems and make peaceful ways rather than things like this. I agree with you. But can you see why Nat Turner and his group were tired of what was happening to them?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So does this letter from one governor to another, what do you think about the point of view of that? What's your thoughts there?
I think the governors are like trying to stop slavery because everybody's different, but they should be happy about that because you wouldn't know who's who.
So when you're saying governors are trying to stop slavery, do you think that the governors from the north or the governors from the south are the ones who are trying to stop it?
I think they're trying to join all together.
So does this sound like that they're joining together? No, it sounds one-sided, doesn't it? Logan, what do you think? Would it be the governors from the north, or would it be the governors from the south who you think would be trying to stop slavery? The northern ones. So the one that's writing this from the south, his point of view is, you northern people, would you please stop teaching them things like Christianity and religion? And would you please stop teaching them that it's okay to be equal and it's okay to be we the people? Would you please stop that? That's what he's saying in his letter. Lindsay?
They're trying to strengthen slavery.
Yeah, the South is still trying to say, we want to have slavery here. Would you please stop what you're doing in the North for that? So, in knowing what we have found out today, what could be our third big idea? I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so you can see what we already have on there. We have our topic, Influences of Preston Brooks. We had a big idea of peaceful actions and protests when we looked at the Handbill of Outrage to stop slavery and abolitionists trying to get that taken care of, and that people were angry and wanting slavery. And then we had the Supreme Court decision, so we've had some then court case that we were talking about, the Dred Scott case, and he lost that case because, as you were just talking about, Toby, he's not a citizen in there, even though we're thinking it did say, we the people, right? But when that happened, all that did was strengthen abolitionists even more and try and cause more people to come to that. So if we take a look here, we have one more big idea that we need to add from this document and what we learned today. Would you talk to a partner and then I will let you share? 0. What should go down here in our last big idea then? What do you think would go there? Caroline, do you have an idea? So Nat Turner's rebellion, you think needs to go in here. So rebellions. And we'll put Nat Turner's with a big one there. Okay. Mason?
Nat Turner's killed 57 whites. A vote.
Yeah. So that rebellion killed white people.
57 of them.
Okay. I was thinking it was more than that.
60.
Was it 60?
Yeah.
61? Okay. But you're right, it was a lot. Look back to our document, Mason, see if you can find it for me so I make sure I have the number right. Look and see if you can see it in our picture if it was in there. I'm not sure if it was or not. Look back to see if you can source it for us. Okay, so 61 in there?
60 white. It's 60.
Okay. 60? All right. That's where I'm thinking that 61 came from, huh? So then they captured black rebellions. All right, so in the end then, we looked at a document. What was that document saying that we looked at? So we have our image and we have Nat Turner's rebellion in there. What was that document saying? Would you talk to your partner right now? All right, so maybe we can add to our Tell Me Mores now about the document. Trent, you just had a great idea that you were just telling me. What did you get out of that letter from one governor to the other? What were they saying?
That they should have 2 masters, a slave master, or and a god master.
Because if we teach them too many things, what's going to happen?
And get their freedom.
Yes. So, don't teach how to get their freedom. And you were saying that was through religion. Was one way. Something else to add to that. Olivia?
That also kind of goes into like writing and reading because they wouldn't want them to write because even if they were to get a chance, they wouldn't be able to write their name on the papers or read the papers.
Right.
So then they wouldn't be able to get any freedom.
Exactly right. So it also had to do with when we learned before about not being able to read, which is in our schema already. Is there another thing that they said that they shouldn't be teaching them? What's that, Allie?
I think it was something like
Christianity is going to be our religion, so we've got that one down. Alexis, or something else you want to add?
Reading and writing.
We've got that one down. Okay. Because when we give them these ideas and they know how to get their freedom is what they're talking about, and they don't respect white people is what they were saying. Yes,
Thinking
Lindsay?
that they cannot serve 2 masters.
Yeah, and that's just exactly what Trent was talking about too. If they do that, they'll rebel. And they don't want them to rebel. They want them to be workers for them for earning money on their plantations. So, we have some influences now. We have 3 things that we have looked at as far as influences on Preston Brooks that have happened before he goes in and does to the Senate what he did to Charles Sumner. We talked about peaceful actions and protests of meetings of abolitionists and fighting against them. We talked about the Supreme Court decisions and how those are being made. And we also talked about then today the rebellion actions of what's happened with that. So these are the things that have happened prior to, plus maybe some things that you know in your background knowledge too, that have influenced Preston Brooks. We'll be writing about that tomorrow. So tomorrow I will be giving you a number notes that looks like this. You'll decide on a topic sentence and a conclusion sentence for this, but we brainstormed this together. So I will share this with you to help you with your writing piece that we do tomorrow then. Okay. So, influences on Preston Brooks. Would you tell a partner what those are? Go. 2, 1, 0. Austin, could you share one influence on Preston Brooks that we've learned about? The rebellions of black people, you're right. Can you tell me another one that we've had, Nadia?
Peaceful actions and protests.
Peaceful actions and protests. Lauren, can you tell me another one?
Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court cases that was decided with the Dred Scott case. Lindsay, something else to add?
They were teaching them about religion.
Yes, teaching them about religion.
Charles Sumner.
And his whole speech of Charles Sumner was probably an influence on him also. I agree. So it takes it back to these things, plus what we learned with our first question of what actually happened was also an influence. So we were talking about, Olivia, at the very beginning when you said those straws keep coming on top of that back, we're using that analogy of, and that was finally Preston Brooks lost it. He went into the Senate. Was the straw that broke the camel's back, and then he went in and he did his act of violence, didn't he? Okay.